riding down Highway 61. Sides of the roads all lined with fields, nothing but sunset in the windshield. Feel it as soon as I ride into town. This is where I go to slow down. Miles and miles of soybeans and corn. I'm in the place where the blues was born. About a mile from the big muddy river, place I'll always remember. Cabin on the lake and a fishing pole. Forever here I'll rest my soul. I can feel my worries drift away from being out in the sun all day. No matter where in the world I go, I'll always find home on the banks of that oxbow.
I got a question that I personally would love to know the answer to. What's the biggest crappie y'all have caught in a research project? From netting to
Okay,
when was it?
let me answer again. I don't know.
go up.
We were tagging fish on Enid for project we were doing in the early 90s, fish going through the spillway. And we had nets in the spillway working with the Corps and looking at what's coming through, and we were having to tag fish to see what percentage of fish might be being lost. And we picked up a crappie, white crappie, in the back of Billy's Creek, a little slough run off the creek that I know easily went over 4 pounds. I guessed it at a little over 4, but we didn't have scales with us. You know, we just had a tagging gun, and
Did you tag it? And he's
Oh yeah.
and never any data from that fish.
Nope.
So he probably died of old age.
If he made it that far, he's probably going to make it to old age.
Yep.
He probably just died with a tag in him. But I think the largest that I've seen when we were regularly sampling was like 3.7, 3.8, 3.7, 3.8, something in that area. But and this is one of the most common questions we get is, what's the biggest fish you've ever seen? What's the biggest bass you've ever? And it's like, just what you see when you're out there fishing.
Yeah.
That's a great answer.
There's not this
Moby Dick out there.
Yeah, there's not. In fact, we probably see, because we pick up a lot of small fish that most folks, wouldn't even catch on a hook. The average fish that we see is probably way smaller than what most folks see, but there's no hidden monster out there.
Yeah.
We got a rumor that floated around that we had shocked up like 5 world record crappie on Arcabutla or something.
I've heard that.
And
So that's false.
well, I said, well, if we did, I didn't know about it, and I would be the one on the shocking boat. So I enlisted the help of one of our law enforcement compatriots up there in DeSoto County, and he did a little, well, who did you hear it from kind of thing, and eventually tracked it back to a bait shop owner that was trying to drum up some business. So,
Nothing but a hustle.
yeah. Well, I can't imagine anybody doing something.
Worst place to get fishing reports is the bait shop.
So I got real quick. When's your next shock treatment?
Fall.
Well, right now we're trying to do Tunica cutoff because we see it's mainly a brim and crappie lake, and we see those fish up shallow in the spring better than we do the fall, but we're just fighting the water levels this year.
You think you could tag us along and us film something like that?
I don't see why not. It'd probably be the best thing to do would be fall.
In the fall?
Yeah.
I think that'd be pretty cool to get on board and film.
Well, now I don't know if you could be, on board the boat because it'd be a little crowded, but
I got you.
I got a 10-foot handle on that dip net that
There you go.
liable to crack you over the skull when I'm swinging it around.
One of the questions I was wanting to ask that it was in and out of my mind, I want to ask before I forget. There's a lot of anglers across the whole states that's, when is it best time to keep a trophy fish or throw it back?
If you catch one.
If you catch one. If you catch a 3-pound crappie down in Mississippi or anywhere, when is the point of no return to throw it back or keep it?
That's a good question. I was talking with one of our other guides about that just here recently. I understand completely for somebody that's come down here, it's like, trip of a lifetime, and whether they hired a guide or not, if they caught a big fish. I actually have a photo of a lady from Missouri, I believe she was from. She specifically come down to Grenada to catch big fish. She caught one fish. It was 2.8 pounds, and she was just as tickled as if she'd won the lottery.
Right.
And if she wanted to mount that fish, I got no problem with that. Let it be said, though, that you can get replicas made now.
Yeah. So another question too on top of that before I forget. What about? All right. Obviously, trophy fish has them genes. Is it better after it's caught to throw it back to get them genes through the other fish to have trophy fish or not?
Well, you know about Texas Share Lunker program, right? You're aware of that? They
Toledo Bend, seems like.
Well, it's statewide.
Oh, okay.
They any bass over 13 pounds is donated to their hatchery program to
Oh wow.
Be used in their
Brood stock.
and with the idea being that fish that makes it to that big. Now they don't look at how long it took it to get there. It could have taken it 15 years, and one could have taken 5 years. So that's not a surefire way of producing trophy fish. But one of the reasons we went from the 10-inch to the 12-inch limit, and I'm glad you brought it up, was that we were, this year's fish this fall will be about this big, about 3 to 4 inches. And then the next year is when they put on their most percentage-wise growth in their lives, because they're not reproductively active yet. All their energy is going into growth instead of making eggs or, fanning a nest and all that stuff. So that second year is real important to getting growth. Well, we were seeing, when we had with 10-inch limit, we were seeing a certain percentage. It was about 25% or so of our fish that were, a year and a half old, that by July, August, and on after that, they were already getting over to 10 inches and being harvested. And they hadn't even spawned yet, So you're and our average, year and a half old, or we call it a 1+ when we sample in the fall. It's not 2 years old yet, because its birthday is like April.
Right.
So we call it a 1+ in the fall. And they were running, an average of about 8 to 9 inches, but you'd had some be up 11 inches or more, and some be down around 5 inches. It's just like your school buddies when y'all went through class. Some of the guys were, when you were, in the middle, and some, So what we were doing with the 10-inch limit was removing the fastest growing fish every year that had not spawned yet. So we were taking that fast growing gene. It's same reason our wildlife compatriots went from the 4-point rule to the spread and all that stuff, because they found out with the 4-point rule they were basically high grading their best growing bucks.
Youth.
So yeah, and they were taking these genetically superior deer out of the population. So it's the same sort of thing, and so that's we found with the 12-inch we could pretty much shut down harvest of our 1+s and keep those, allow them to spawn at least once when they were 2 years old, before they grew into a harvestable size.
So a
range.
crappie to start spawning has to be at least 2.
No, and again, it depends. Bass, crappie, most fish, there's an age component to it, but it's more of a size. For a bass, it's like once he gets about 8 or 9 inches long, he's ready to start spawning, whether that takes him a year or whether that takes him 4 or 5 years. That's when he starts. Same with the crappie. That they get up to a certain size and they become sexually mature. Whether it takes them, a year or, I've seen crappie that were, say, spawned in a pond and very few in there, go from spawn to 10 inches long or more from, April to October. That's extremely fast growth. You normally don't see that.
It's real fast.
Yeah, anywhere in a natural situation. But, that fish would have spawned the next spring at 1 year old.
Say like we have a real dry spring and we have a bad spawn that we foresee happening. How fast do y'all react and go ahead and stock the lake?
Well, these lakes have been sampled for almost since they were, the dams closed by our agency. And, we've never seen a need for supplemental stocking. There's a lot of people that call for it, but based on when we used to do rotenone studies, we would average about 500 young a year per acre every year. I've seen as low as 100 per acre and as high as over 5,000 an acre. So it's extremely variable. And you said a drought situation that you foresee. Who foresees that? And if you can you give me some stock tips? Because most of the time,
need cover.
In order to stock something, you really need to be planning a year ahead, so that you have 1 year old fingerlings, because crappie don't handle well when it's hot. They, especially the little ones.
Right.
White crappie, especially. I saw that this weekend. They die like flies. And so, you have to either wait till they're 1 year old or at least get into the late fall and when the water's cooled off and you can move them. And then you have problems during that time period with cannibalism and so on and so forth. But if the water is low, that lake can only produce so many fish, okay? And it's producing as much as it can produce when the water is low, and you put more fish on that, their survival rate is going to be poor. If the water is high, well, man, those crappie, it's going to be a good spawn. And, putting more fish on that, you may just be slowing that growth rate down. So, it's crappie have these,
cycles,
pretty variable spawning. And, with these lakes being, and even natural lakes, like your connected river oxbows and stuff, they're, natural variability. And it may be nothing to do with the water level. When we were working with University of Mississippi and developing a triploid, had 3 sets of chromosomes, a sterile fish. We were working with I won't say working with, we were corresponding with some folks up in Illinois that were working on making a hybrid fish, crappie. And so we were both strip spawning crappie the same time of year, basically, each year. And some springs, everything was great, and it just, everything, you strip spawn and everything turned to fish. And, we had crappie eggs hatching out in petri dishes and eyedroppers and aquaria and everywhere else. In other years, you would do the exact same thing, and your survival rates were just way lower. And what was weird was the same years that it was good here, it was good there. When it was bad here, it was bad there. So there was some kind of something going on, like, general weather patterns or, bad mojo. I don't know what it was, but there was something going on that affected a fairly large geographical area that probably was weather related, that was affecting the crappie spawn, that had nothing to do with, say, an individual lake. Which kind of, yeah, and we were the same way. It's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And then you think about it, and it's like, well, maybe it does.
Yeah.
It's crappie are tough to manage. Mm-hmm. They have variable spawning success, and entirely consumptive fishery, almost, and it's challenge.
I can imagine.
Migration. You did some studies on migration, right?
Well, we were doing a study with Mississippi State and Ole Miss, looking at the water levels, and the tracking study that Ole Miss was involved with was part of that study. Dr. Glenn Parsons was the one that was heading up that study, and he put tracking devices on the fish and tried to follow them, which was a challenge, because they moved a lot. It was it was nothing for them to move 5 to 10 miles a day.
5 to 10 miles a day?
Well, they might be down,
like in circles, or like across the lake and back?
Yeah.
Across the lake and back.
They might be, I don't know how familiar you are with Enid, but they might be in Wallace, like off the mouth of Wallace Creek one day, or near the dam, and then the next day they'll be up at Water Valley Landing or above.
Good Lord.
And
did you ever think that, Brad?
No. That's a lot of movement.
Well, one of my good buddies that I went through graduate school with, who was also a fisheries biologist, as he put it, a fish ain't got nothing to do all day but swim. And when you think about it, y'all are crappie anglers. You're out there with your electronics. You see schools. They're generally not stationary. You have to keep up with them, don't you?
Absolutely.
And they're moving a certain way. So, they're going wherever they're going based on, forage, time of year, whether it's spawn, post-spawn. So, they do a lot of moving.
I got a crazy question for you out from left field here. So let's just say you just recently was at the ACT tournament, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. They have a trailer put all the fish in. Is that right?
Oh, let's not go there.
You don't want to go there? You know what I'm going with?
Yeah, go ahead.
You want me to go ahead? All right, I'll go ahead. So if you was at a tournament, all these out of state boats coming in, with everything that you know from A to Z, everybody tuning in. I mean, is it that big of a deal when when you're throwing fish back and the public sees them dying a little bit, what would you tell the public or the eyes views or everybody's viewing and saying if it's bad or not?
Okay. There have been 1 million studies done, well, I won't say 1 million, a lot of studies done on bass tournament mortality.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's any studies that have been done on crappie tournament mortality. You can't find them on Google.
Okay.
There may be some, but they're few and far between. There are several factors that contribute to mortality. Number 1 is oxygen. Number 2 is the species of fish. White crappie are much less hardy than black crappie. You look at them crosswise and they will die if at the water, and the third is water temperature. The warmer it is, the less oxygen the water holds, and the warmer it is, the less likely that they're going to survive. Once you get over 80 degrees, yes, those fish may be flopping in your live well, but they may not make it once they're turned loose. One of the, you remember we talked about the crappie-thon?
Mm-hmm.
They went out of business but re-emerged as Crappie USA back about 1996, and they started doing a crappie tournament trail, I think 98, and they just had a tournament on Grenada this past weekend.
Right.
I think it was Crappie USA. They came to Grenada. They had put all the fish from a tournament in a tank that was about half the size of this table and about as high off the floor, that had hundreds of fish in it. And I said, do y'all have oxygen? No. They had a bubbler. You really need to take those ones that are not going to make it out of there before you turn them loose. Oh, they're fine. Okay. Well, they threw them back after the tournament, and my phone rung off the hook for about 2-3 days because they didn't make it.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's not good for public perception or for the tournaments, or, and gave tournaments a initial bad impression. They've done better. I will have to say that, they are doing better, but it's hard to, the mindset of crappie is different than bass.
Right.
Bass tournaments, if you've ever been to a BASS or any of the other tournament trails, the main thing is to get that fish back in the water as quick as possible, alive, in good shape. And bass are hardy. They're a lot hardier than either species of crappie. They can take a lot of handling and all. They'll still die. I've got a published bass tournament mortality paper. When we had a slot limit, we were losing 3 times as many fish over the slot as under the slot. But you want to get those fish back, and if you're, keeping them in the basket with no water while you're talking about your sponsors and you're momming them and thanking everybody, and the fish are just laying there, expiring, even if you put them back in the tank and you counted them as weighed alive and released alive, they probably are not going to make it. It would be nice if we had some really good mortality studies done with both species of crappie at different water temperatures.
Right.
And I really think, the bass guys have done a pretty good job. When they have summer tournaments, they're usually like in Lake Champlain or someplace like up north where
Right.
water temperature's a lot cooler. They're not dealing, you don't have a August tournament in Florida, and expect to keep all your fish alive. And I do understand with the coronavirus situation this year and tournaments, postponing, the organizations postpone their tournaments, and they're doing them, more this time of year than they would have in the spring, unfortunately. But, you're going to lose fish in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
It's just no way around it.
And it's tough to keep them alive.
Oh, yeah. Y'all know.
As it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know that you got to, there's all kind of things that you got to do to try and keep them alive. And the bigger they are, the harder they are to keep alive.
Absolutely.
And the reason being is a big fish has has less gill area in proportion to its body size than a small fish. Because if you,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, if one of the key, if you do this causes this, this causes this. If you look at fish kills, if you have like only little fish are surviving of all different species, but your bigger fish died, that's usually a low oxygen, because those little fish are going to be, they got a lot bigger gills in proportion to their body size. They're all gasping at the surface, but the little fish are surviving, and the big fish don't make it. That's good because you got the little fish in there to repopulate
right
after the low oxygen event. But same reason with the bass thing. Those bigger fish were dying more than the smaller fish. Crappie are going to be the same way, I have a feeling.
Brad?
Number one, I want to appreciate your time today. I know it took
some
you're welcome.
Effort,
and I know our listeners love listening about, of course,
Biology.
Anything crappie-related research and, the regulations, how they've all come, and just the history that you've given us today is amazing to me.
Well, I've been through it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Are you working on anything right now?
Well, as far as
is the study is something that's kind of got you excited right now that you're working on?
No, not right now. We're just doing our routine monitoring as best we can with the situation. We've had to suspend our creel survey this year because of the whole, weighing fish and all that kind of stuff that we can't be,
as normal.
Doing things as normal. So we're just waiting for things to, like everything else, get back to normal.
I got you.
So we can get back to doing what we do. We'll still be doing our fall sampling and all that stuff. But it's just, it is what it is.
That's right.
That's right. It is what it is. Well, guys, Keith Mills, everybody here. We greatly appreciate it again coming on.
Thank y'all. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep. Other than that, I'm Justin Berry.
Brad Chappell.
You listen to Crappie Nation. We'll see y'all.
All right.
About a mile from big muddy river, a place I'll always remember. Cabin on the lake and a fishing pole. Forever here I'll rest my soul. I can feel